All right, coming up on this next question here, we're going to begin by understanding what the premise is, and we're trying to evaluate an expression, but we have to do this carefully here. We have M as in Mississippi, and then N as in Nancy. We have two variables that we'll be plugging in, so be very careful. So part one, I'll plug in M equals 5 right there. And part two, I'll plug in N equals 2 right here. So once I do that, I'll have 0.8 multiplied by M, which is 5, plus 1.5N as in Nancy, which is 2. And then we'll be adding or subtracting at the end 4.25. All right, everyone. So here we go. It looks like we're going to have to multiply here, multiply there, add, and then subtract, and then we're done. But those decimals can be a little intimidating. But remember, with practice, you're going to go a long way. Because when you have 0.8 multiplied by 5, that's the same as 8 times 5. And then we'll move the decimal place back one time. So 8 times 5 is 40. And then we'll move the decimal place back one time. Because again, we just had one decimal place for the 0.8. So this is 4.0, which is the same thing as 4. Next up, we have 1.5 multiplied by 2. And again, that's the same thing as saying 15 multiplied by 2. And then we'll just bring the decimals back at the end, right there. So there we go. So 4.0, 3.0, which is just going to be 3. And then we subtract the 4.25. All right, here we are. So we'll do 4 plus 3, which is 7. 7 minus 4.25. You can treat this like money because you can say, hey, $7 minus $4, that's going to be $3. And then $3 minus 25 cents, that's going to leave us at $2.75. Again, if that was a money problem, that's how that would go. But nonetheless, the correct answer here is B, 2.75. All right, let's go ahead and tackle this question here, where, as always, remember, we want to take the first step and understand what we're trying to accomplish. So in this particular problem, it says, how much mixed paint is left? My party people, help me out. Before we even understand, what the numbers are that we're dealing with, can you help me out? When we're asking how much of something is left, can you tell me what operation might come to mind? Yeah, typically we might be thinking subtraction, right? Typically we're thinking subtraction. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you how simple this problem actually is and how the unit conversion part of it is truly what makes it tough. So watch. It says a painter mixes, and let me actually just use my pointer. A painter mixes this much paint with that much paint or this much tint. After mixing, she uses this much for a job. So everyone think of it like this. The painter mixes this much paint with this much tint. When you mix things together, everybody, what operation is that? If I'm mixing the paint and the tint, that's addition. So I'm going to say that the paint plus the tint is the mixture that I'm working with. And then it says, after we're done with the mixing, she uses this much for a job. Okay, so I'm going to say subtract, because if we use it, that's subtraction. We're taking that away from what we have. And so we're going to subtract the amount for the job. And there we are. So everyone, with that said, is it understandable that, again, before we get into the unit conversions, this is a pretty straightforward question. We're going to add the paint and the tint together because that's going to give us the mixture. And then from there, we just subtract how much we used for the job. Yeah, and there we go. There we are. So now let's go ahead and do the math. The paint, that's going to be 4 gallons and 1 quart. The tint, let me just go ahead and bring the tint as a different color. Let me just go ahead and use blue for that. So give me one moment there. Boom, changed it to blue. So let's go ahead and add together the 2 gallons and 3 quarts. everyone, when we do that, let's add that together here. We have the 4 gallons plus the 2 gallons, so that's 6 gallons. And everybody, I'm not trying to patronize you, but what's 1 quart plus 3 quarts? Yeah, 1 quart plus 3 quarts, that's going to be 4 quarts. And can anybody tell me what 4 quarts is the same as? Yeah, 4 quarts is a gallon. So we have the 4 quarts right here. But what I can highlight about this is that 4 quarts is quite literally 1 gallon. Let me actually write that in purple. So again, 1 gallon that we can add in right there. So once we do that, folks, here's the thing. We can add that in there to make 7 gallons. And everybody, what operation are we going to do with this 5 gallons and 2 quarts? What did we say we would do? We said we would subtract. Now, look at what happens. If I try to subtract the 5 gallons and 2 quarts, does everybody here notice that we don't have anything here for quarts? So we're going to have to do a little bit of conversion. Anybody notice that? Yeah, I don't like that, right? I don't like that I'm going to be taking extra steps to turn the gallons back into quarts. I don't want to do that. Me, personally, I'm work smarter, not harder. Some people call it lazy. I call it working smarter, not harder. So what I'm going to do, actually, is I'm going to just remove this 7 gallons and remind myself that, hey, guess what? I had 6 gallons and 4 quarts. That's the same thing as 7 gallons. Same thing. This is much easier now. Take a look, everyone. 6 gallons minus 5 gallons, 1 gallon. 4 quarts minus 2 quarts, 2 quarts. And take a look. Straightforward, nice and easy. So that's why I like to caution folks, don't convert in the middle of the problem. Typically, you want to convert all the way at the end. But nonetheless, there we are. The correct final answer here is answer choice A. 1 gallon, 2 quarts, and there we go. All right, so in this next problem, as always, we want to begin with that question sentence, no doubt about it. So when we begin, we see that we're reading, if day 1 was 56 miles, how many miles were run on day 2? Okay, sounds good. So there's a comparison that I clearly see here happening between day 1 and day 2. And I'm going to solve this problem the straightforward way. So I see that day 1, that's 56 miles. And then I want to compare that with day 2 being what number of miles? Okay, perfect. So we have that going on. And when we read the ratio given to us here, our running log shows day 1 to day 2 miles in the ratio 7 to 9. So I know that for day 1 we have 7. For day 2 we have 9 in terms of the comparison. When we have this comparison here, everybody, we have 2 options. We can write a proportion and solve it, or we can compare the same things in the same way. The way that we can compare is knowing that if this is day 1 and this is day 2, I'm going to compare day 1 to day 1. Everybody, what do I multiply 7 by to get 56? That'll be 8. Absolutely. So I'll multiply 7 by 8, and that's what gives me 56. Perfect. So because I've confirmed the comparison between day 1s, I have the same comparison for day 2s. I'm guaranteed that 9 multiplied by the same comparison 8, that's going to get us to that correct answer. Everybody, what is 9 times 8? 9 multiplied by 8, that's going to get us 72. And there we go. There's our correct answer, answer choice C, and we are all done.